Welcome to this critical analysis. And today we're focusing on, well, perhaps the most painful yet crucial truth for any high expertise professional who's made that leap. You know the one.
That leap from the, let's say, secure walls of a major corporation into the world of independent consulting.
Exactly. And we're zeroing in on the money they unknowingly, and I think tragically, just leave on the table.
We're not talking about beginners here. We're discussing highly skilled individuals, people holding top-tier professional qualifications. Think MRICS in the surveying and construction fields.
Right. People who've spent a decade, maybe two, mastering their craft inside these massive organizations.
And they make the transition seeking financial freedom, seeking control, but they find themselves almost immediately and consistently just fundamentally undercharging for the value they deliver. It's a paradox.
It really is. And that is precisely our mission for this six-figure freelancers analysis. We are going to unpack the hard evidence, the source material that reveals exactly why these top-tier experts fail to capture their true value.
And the tragedy, which the research just lays out so clearly, is that it's not a matter of missing skill. Not at all.
It's a failure of pricing strategy. I mean, these are top professionals who are often missing out on, what, $100,000, $150,000?
Sometimes even $200,000 annually.
Annually. It's a preventable error, and it just cripples their financial independence right at the starting line.
It does. We've been examining insights directly from consultants who specialize in this, in value pricing, specifically focusing on that really unique and difficult transition phase.
From employee to consultant.
Yes, from being a salaried employee to becoming an independent specialist. So if you, our listener, have been wrestling with where to set your fees, or if you just feel like you are working way too hard for what you actually take home,
then this discussion is essential.
It really is. We're going to uncover not just the problem, but the mental frameworks that you really need to dismantle to succeed.
Okay, let's unpack this setup then. Let's really get into it. Imagine the specialist consultant. You know the type. 10, 15, maybe even 20 years of experience.
The person who was the gold standard in their field inside the big firm, they have the knowledge, the network, the proven track record, everything.
But that very tenure, that deep corporate conditioning, creates what the sources we've been looking at call the invisible anchor.
I like that term. An invisible anchor.
And this anchor, it just prevents them from adopting true value pricing the moment they step out on their own.
It truly is a paradox of professional success, isn't it? The immense corporate experience gives you all the intellectual firepower you need to solve multi-million-dollar problems for clients.
But it simultaneously handcuffs your perception of your own worth when you have to put a price tag on it.
Exactly. The core conflict, and this is articulated so well by the specialized consultants we studied, is brutally simple. These independent experts lose money not because their clients can't afford them, but because they are, and I'm quoting here, charging like an employee, not a consultant.
And that distinction is just. It's everything. It's absolutely vital. Charging like an employee means your entire focus is on inputs.
The time you spend, the effort you exert.
The hours you log. That is exactly what the corporate machine was designed to condition you to do.
Yeah.
It needed to measure productivity in these neat, billable increments.
It's how the machine works. But when you become independent, you have to shift that focus. You just have to. It's not about the inputs anymore.
It has to be about the outcome you generate, the magnitude of the problem you solve for the client, and the real value you add.
To really understand this, I think we need to dismantle those specific internal metrics, the ones that shaped an employee's sense of value for so long.
The corporate anchors.
Exactly. The 6 corporate anchors that become useless or, actively detrimental the moment you become an independent specialist. Every single one of them warps the consultant's pricing strategy.
How so?
By forcing them to look backward. They're looking at their old internal costs rather than looking forward at the external value they're creating for the client.
Okay, so let's start with anchor number 1, salary bands. How does being defined by a fixed internal structure for so long, how does that limit a consultant's potential when they go out on their own?
Well, inside a massive firm, your worth is fundamentally constrained. It's boxed in by a compensation structure that's defined by HR, by budget committees.
Not by the value you're creating day to day.
Not at all. If you're a senior specialist, the highest level before you hit executive management, your salary band might top out at, say, $200,000 a year. That's your ceiling.
And that's regardless of whether the value you generate for the firm's clients is 5 or even 10 times that amount.
Precisely. The firm has to manage costs across hundreds, maybe thousands of people, so your worth is capped and systematized. It has to be.
So what happens when that professional leaves? How does that anchor follow them?
They almost always, and this is often subconscious, they take that salary band maximum, that 200,000, and they do some rough math.
They divide it by 2,000 working hours a year.
Yep. And then they add a modest, often totally arbitrary premium, maybe 20 or 30%.
Just to cover self-employment taxes, benefits, that sort of thing.
Right. So they're using the absolute ceiling of their cost to their old firm as the starting base for their external price. It completely limits their imagination based on the very structure they just worked so hard to escape.
They're confusing what the firm paid me with what a client is willing to pay for my specialized solution.
You've hit it exactly. They forget that the salary band tells you what the firm is willing to pay to secure your 40 or 50 hours a week. It does not in any way reflect the economic value of the problems you solve for clients.
Which could be in the millions.
Easily. And that's the first and most entrenched psychological trap.
Okay, let's move to anchor 2. Utilization rates. This one feels particularly insidious, especially in professional services where, time tracking is gospel.
Oh, it's a killer. In the corporate world, your success is often measured by utilization. How many billable hours did you log versus how many hours you were in the office? The pressure is constant.
Maximize billable clock time.
Always. Now, as an independent consultant, if you maintain that ingrained focus on utilization, you're actively penalizing your own efficiency.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Let's say your decade of experience allows you to solve a really complex quantity surveying issue, maybe a big variations dispute, in 5 hours.
Okay.
But it used to take you 20 hours to do that same task when you were a mid-level employee. The temptation, because you're still thinking about utilization, is to charge less.
Because your time on the clock was lower.
Right. And that completely misses the point. The client paid for the dispute to be solved correctly, quickly, and definitively. They didn't pay for your time tracking effort.
They value the speed and the certainty.
And yet the consultant, trapped by this anchor, feels guilty, charging a high fee for a low amount of time. It's backward.
It's completely backwards. All right, anchor 3. Internal fee scales. This is another big one.
Huge. Large firms operate with massive overheads. You've got offices, support staff, marketing departments, complex administrative costs. I mean, the list goes on.
And their pricing structures, the hourly rates they quote to clients, are designed specifically to cover that enormous infrastructure. They have to absorb these huge fixed costs.
And this is where the solo specialist makes a critical error. They try to imitate this structure.
So they look at what their old firm charged per hour for a senior manager in contract administration.
And they try to match it or maybe come in just a little bit under it, hoping that makes them look competitive.
But the independent consultant doesn't have that same administrative burden. They don't have those fixed costs.
Not even close. They're mimicking a pricing structure designed for a massive ship when they're now a sleek, fast speedboat. They are, in effect, pricing an overhead that doesn't exist for them.
So they're anchoring their prices to this unnecessary, cumbersome corporate scale.
Their rates should be simplified. They should reflect direct, high-leverage knowledge, not institutional padding.
That makes so much sense. Okay, anchor 4, departmental write-offs and discounts. This sounds like a real insider baseball metric that affects perception.
It is, and it's subtle but powerful. Internally, large firms often write off or significantly discount work, sometimes 10%, sometimes 30%.
Why would they do that?
To maintain key client relationships, or to manage risk, or maybe to fix some internal scope creep where they underquoted. These financial mechanisms are totally invisible to the client, but they deeply affect how the employee views the real cost and value of their own labor.
So it creates a false reality of disposability.
Exactly. If a specialist saw, over 5 years, that 25% of their time was routinely written off in the internal books because the firm wanted to secure the next big phase of a project,
they might start to believe that a quarter of their value is inherently disposable, or at least negotiable.
and that psychological conditioning leads them to proactively offer discounts when they go independent. They assume high-value work naturally involves a percentage of write-off or negotiation, even when they're dealing with a brand new client on a perfectly defined project.
So they're discounting their own price before the client even asks for one.
They're leaving money on the table before the negotiation has even started.
Wow. Okay, let's move to Anchor 5, unquestioned market rates. This feels like maybe the most widespread and damaging external trap.
I think it is. This is the trap set by conformity and, frankly, the fear of standing out. Consultants so often price according to these perceived industry standards.
But those standards are usually set by less specialized, less experienced, or crucially generalist entities, right?
Absolutely. Take quantity surveying again. If large generalist contracting firms, who often use costing as a loss leader just to secure big build contracts, are charging, say, X dollars per hour for basic costing services.
The MRICS specialist feels constrained by that X.
They do. Even though the value the specialist delivers, we're talking about clarity, contractual certainty, multi-million-dollar risk reduction, is exponentially higher, they feel they have to fit in with what the industry seems to expect.
And that expectation, as the research shows, is often based on the lowest common denominator. Or it's just outdated data from 5 or 10 years ago.
Right. It forces the specialist, who should be commanding a premium, to get down in the trenches and fight on commodity pricing. It's a losing battle from the start.
So that leads us to the final anchor, Anchor 6.
Yes, and this is the one that often gets overlooked in the purely financial analysis, the comfort of delegation, or, the internal support structures.
What do you mean by that?
When you're inside a large firm, you're usually just focused on the technical delivery. You have internal marketing, you have sales departments, admin staff, IT support, dedicated quality assurance processes.
You're cushioned. You get to spend 100% of your time being the specialist.
Correct. But when you leave, that all disappears. The consultant often calculates their new, higher hourly rate to cover all the things they now have to do: the sales, the invoicing, the admin.
And that bloated hourly rate probably scares them.
It does. So they lower the rate to compete, but internally they still feel like they have to charge for those tasks that they used to delegate. The anchor here is the belief that their former, say, $150,000 salary inherently included the time spent by all that support staff.
But it didn't. That salary was based on their technical contribution, not on running a full-spectrum business operation.
Precisely. When you're independent, you have to separate your technical delivery pricing, which should be astronomical, from your administrative tasks, which should be minimized or outsourced. You can't just combine them into a single, fearful, mediocre hourly rate.
That makes perfect sense. So these 6 corporate numbers, these 6 anchors, they just no longer apply the moment the consultant goes independent.
Not at all. When you are independent, you are selling direct value. You're selling outcomes. You are not selling internal clock time that's regulated by HR and accounting departments.
The specialist consultant's price has to reflect the magnitude of the problem solved and the certainty provided.
Not the complexity of their former employer's payroll system. I mean, if you want to be a 6-figure freelancer, you have to first eliminate these 6 corporate anchors from your thinking.
That sets the stage perfectly for the consequences.
No.
So let's shift now. We've talked about why they underprice. Let's talk about what the impact truly is. And let's start with the immediate and, frankly, catastrophic financial loss. This is where that dream of becoming a 6-figure freelancer collides brutally with reality.
The quantitative data is it's deeply sobering. And it's so powerful because it comes directly from the consultants themselves after the fact.
They're looking back with hindsight.
Yes. They look back at their first year of independence, a year of hard work, high stress, and delivering top-tier value, and they realize they left $60,000, $120,000.
And sometimes more.
Sometimes upwards of $200,000 on the table. Gone.
Let's contextualize that $200,000 figure for a moment. This is not some theoretical loss.
No, it's real money.
This could represent a massive shift in someone's lifestyle. It's the difference between true financial freedom and feeling like you just traded one corporate boss for 100 small clients who pay you poorly.
It's a child university fund. It's a critical early investment into a stable retirement. And it's sacrificed purely due to a lack of pricing sophistication.
And that's the tragic irony that we touched on earlier. This loss occurs not because these professionals weren't good enough. It's not because their expertise lacked market value.
No, it is purely because their pricing didn't match their expertise. They were out there delivering MRICS-level value, the kind of assurance that secures multi-million-dollar investments.
But they were using an hourly rate rooted in a salary band from 5 years ago.
It truly emphasizes that pricing strategy is a skill. It's a skill entirely separate from professional competency.
You can be the world's leading expert in complex contract administration, the person everyone wants on their team when things go wrong.
But if you price your work based on fear of rejection or old corporate utilization habits or what you think the lower market rate is, you will never, ever achieve the financial success your expertise actually merits.
The technical skill is solved. The business skill is lacking.
Exactly. Now, beyond the immediate financial hemorrhaging, we have to focus on the deeper non-monetary cost. And that's the perception problem.
Right.
Undercharging doesn't just reduce your profit, it fundamentally changes how clients perceive you. Pricing isn't just a mechanism for exchange. It is a powerful, silent communication tool. It defines your status in the market.
This is the aha moment, I think. This is what we really need to focus on. If you price low, you are sending a series of very specific, very negative signals to the exact high-value clients you're trying to attract.
And these are clients who understand value. They're often very comfortable paying a premium for certainty.
So let's detail these 5 negative signals, because this is where the seasoned professional unknowingly undermines their entire brand, their entire reputation.
Absolutely. Let's start with signal 1. Lack of confidence.
Okay. How does a low price signal that?
Well, when a specialist with 2 decades of experience is charging half of what the established mid-tier firms charge, the client does not think, oh, what a bargain.
No.
The client instinctively thinks, why is this person so cheap? What are they missing? What's wrong here? The low price just screams uncertainty or a lack of self-belief.
It suggests the consultant doesn't truly believe their own specific niche knowledge is worth a premium.
And in high-stakes environments, clients equate confidence with competence. If the consultant can't communicate confidence through their price tag, the client is going to hesitate to trust them with critical, costly decisions.
I mean, think of it from the client's perspective.
Yeah.
If you can't even value your own expertise, why should I, the client, value your advice?
Exactly, which moves us to signal 2, lack of specialization.
How does pricing affect that?
High-value clients understand a fundamental truth of the market. True specialists, the ones who solve extremely narrow, complex, and costly problems, the ones who truly prevent risk, they charge a premium.
So the high price is actually a filter.
It's a filter for top talent. They actively seek out specialists because they're expensive. So if you present yourself as a leading specialist, QS in, say, advanced infrastructure claims, but your price is competitive with a generalist firm offering routine cost estimates.
The client just lumps you in with the generalist.
Right. The price implies you're just another pair of hands available for hourly work, not the unique expert who can guarantee a high-leverage solution. You are inadvertently diluting your specialist brand by competing on the wrong metric.
Cost instead of clarity.
Cost instead of value. Exactly. Which brings us to signal 3, lack of demand. And this is a devastating signal for a professional who wants to be seen as a trusted advisor.
So low prices suggest you're just sitting by the phone waiting for it to ring.
That's it. It suggests an empty schedule and an eagerness to take any work, regardless of whether it's a good fit, regardless of its complexity.
A sophisticated client reasons that if this expert is truly top of the market, they wouldn't need to offer low prices to fill their calendar.
They assume the best consultants have waiting lists, and they charge accordingly. Low pricing, therefore, signals a scarcity of clients, not a specialty of skill.
It makes the client question your track record, or, even worse, your relevance in the current market. This immediately makes you seem less valuable than you actually are.
Which leads right into signal 4, willingness to negotiate. By setting a low anchor price from the start, the consultant immediately positions themselves as just another vendor.
Someone to be squeezed rather than a necessary non-negotiable expert.
Yes, and this instantly changes the whole dynamic of the relationship. When the price is high and it's thoroughly justified by the massive value you provide, say, preventing a $1 million contractual loss, the conversation shifts.
It's not, can we lower this?
No, it becomes, how quickly can we get started? But a low price implies flexibility. It implies there's room for movement. The client sees your price as just a starting point for haggling.
So if you're already cheap, the client feels they can easily squeeze out another 10 or 15%.
And in that moment, your standing is diminished from a necessary partner to a disposable input.
And that brings us to signal 5, which, as you noted, is probably the most uncomfortable one for a highly credentialed professional to unknowingly send.
It is. It's desperation for work.
It's really the final summation of all the other signals, isn't it?
It is. A client assumes that if you are a world-class professional, you should be busy. You should be discerning about your clients. You should be commanding high fees.
So if you're desperate enough to accept low-margin work that doesn't fully respect your expertise,
There must be a flaw. There must be something wrong that the client hasn't identified yet. Maybe they're difficult to work with. Maybe their solutions are dated. Or maybe, just maybe, they aren't as good as their resume suggests.
and for the professional who just spent 20 years achieving MRICS certification and establishing a stellar reputation, the idea that they are now subtly communicating desperation it's deeply offensive.
But it's an undeniable, researched consequence of underpricing. So you see this dual impact. On one hand, you have massive financial loss. On the other, you have a destructive perception problem that is actively turning high-value clients away.
The expert has the competence, but they're using the wrong tool, their pricing, to communicate that competence.
Yeah.
They're actively working against their own career goals of becoming a successful six-figure freelancer.
They are.
So how does a consultant overcome that? How do they get over the deep psychological comfort of the hourly rate, especially when they're facing a procurement department that insists on it? That's the real-world practical challenge.
And that requires focusing entirely on what we'll discuss next, shifting the language from cost to value. The sources are clear on this. When procurement asks for an hourly rate, the consultant must pivot immediately.
So you don't just give them the rate.
You acknowledge the request, but you redirect. You say something like, I appreciate the need for budgetary clarity, but my values is based on the certainty of the outcome, not the duration of the effort. We provide a fixed investment proposal tailored to reduce X risk by Y amount.
You use the language of fixed value, risk mitigation, and guaranteed outcomes.
To sidestep the commoditization of your time.
That pivot is absolutely essential. Okay, so now let's shift the conversation. Let's move away from what consultants think they sell, which is time and input rates, and toward what clients actually buy.
This is the ultimate pivot point. This is what unlocks success as a six-figure freelancer.
And the source material makes it exceptionally clear on this point. Strong specialist consultants, like high-level quantity surveyors, do not compete on rates.
They can't afford to. If they compete on rates, they fall right back into that employee mindset trap, and they risk their entire reputation through all those negative signals we just discussed.
So what do they compete on instead?
They compete on three core pillars that are worth far, far more than any calculated hourly rate. And those are clarity, certainty, and specialist value.
Let's break those down. Clarity is the ability to cut through the immense complexity and confusion that plagues these huge, multi-million-dollar projects.
Certainty is the guarantee that the outcome will meet a defined standard, and crucially, that it will minimize costly future problems.
And specialist value is that unique, decades-earned knowledge. It's the intellectual property that very few others in the market actually possess.
And let's focus intensely on that core distinction we mentioned. Clients are buying outcomes, not hours. They are not interested in the consultant's effort. Effort is a commodity.
What they're interested in is the reduction of future headaches, the avoidance of massive financial exposure, the assurance of a smooth project delivery.
There's a perfect analogy for this. When a property developer hires a specialist QS to audit their statutory reporting and claims process, they are not paying for the consultant's 40 hours of reviewing documents. What they're actually paying for is the legal and financial clarity that allows them to confidently release millions of dollars in project funding without the fear of future litigation or some kind of penalty.
That's what they're buying.
That is the product. Precisely. So we need to detail the specific high-value outcomes clients are purchasing, the ones that the sources note are worth far more than most QSs charge. This is the language consultants have to internalize and use when they're setting their premium fees.
All right. Outcome number 1, reduced risk. This is monumental, especially in fields where a small error can lead to colossal budget overruns, project delays, or legal liability.
The client is essentially purchasing an insurance policy against catastrophic failure. Think about a big infrastructure project, where a technical error in cost modeling or a fundamental flaw in the contract administration process could lead to a $10 million budget overrun and a 6-month delay.
The stakes are huge.
Absolutely. So when the specialist consultant quotes a fee of, say, $75,000 for a deep dive analysis of that one specific element, That price is utterly insignificant compared to the potential $10 million loss that their expertise preempts.
So they're purchasing risk mitigation.
And that justifies a massive premium because the consultant's fee is tied to the avoidance of a known quantifiable disaster.
Okay. Outcome number 2, better control. Complex, high-stakes projects can inevitably feel overwhelming, chaotic to the client's internal team, who are often stretched thin.
Right. The client is seeking mastery over a specific, complex project element that currently feels volatile or completely out of control.
The consultant doesn't just deliver a static report then.
No, they deliver a mechanism for control. They turn contractual ambiguity into a clear set of responsibilities. They turn chaos in supply chain costing into a predictable, manageable timeline. They convert financial uncertainty into a measurable variable.
And that sense of control that allows senior executives and investors to sleep at night.
It does. Knowing a specific problem area is definitively handled by the best person for the job. That peace of mind is inherently valuable. It reduces internal stress, it speeds up decision-making, and it absolutely deserves a premium price tag.
Okay, that makes sense. Outcome number 3, clearer decisions. When clients are faced with ambiguous choices, the stakes are often exceptionally high.
They are. Do we push for this contract amendment or do we accept the current terms? Do we use material A, which is cheaper but has regulatory uncertainty, or material B, which is certified but more expensive? These are multi-million-dollar questions.
And the specialist consultant provides the expert guidance to navigate those junctions.
The client is paying for the clarity that ensures the right path is chosen immediately, avoiding costly backtracking or inefficient processes down the line. The price should reflect the future value of the decision being supported, which could easily be $500,000, not the mere time it took to compile the recommendation into a PowerPoint deck.
The consultant is an oracle of high-value information.
And that information must be priced accordingly.
Which brings us to outcome number 4, smarter cost outcomes. This kind of wraps back to the core function of many of these specialist fields.
It does. Maximizing the financial results of the overall project, whether that's through efficiency gains, expert negotiation, or structural optimization of contracts.
The consultant has to position themselves as an investment, never as a cost.
Always. If the consultant's precise input on a major variations claim results in a net 10% saving on a $20 million segment of the project,
Their fee, even if it's $150,000, is just a fraction of the savings they generated.
they are purchasing a smarter financial result. When you're positioning your price, the high-value consultant must always anchor it to the measurable financial improvement they enable. You have to demonstrate that you are a profit generator or a loss preventer, not just another line item on a budget.
And that's what allows them to easily justify prices that are 3, 4, or even 5 times higher than the generalist market rate.
It is.
This brings us full circle then to the 6-figure freelancer goal. It's about synthesizing how focusing on these outcomes, the risk reduction, the certainty, is the only way to justify the premium pricing required to match the consultant's decades of expertise.
Absolutely. The expertise, the 10 or 20 years inside the big firm, the MRICS qualification, that's the necessary foundation. That's the table stakes.
Well, it's not enough.
It's not. The pricing strategy has to reflect the certainty that foundation provides. If you know with confidence that you can reduce a client's risk of litigation by 90% through a contractual audit or optimize their construction costs by 15%, that confidence has to be baked into your fee.
You're selling the ability to remove massive hurdles.
And that removal is what justifies moving from an hourly rate of, say, $180 to a fixed value price of $65,000 for a defined outcome.
It fundamentally transforms the negotiation dynamic. Instead of the client asking, why does this task take so long? Or why is your hourly rate so high?
The conversation pivots. It becomes, how much is it worth to us to know without a shadow of a doubt that this critical $5 million project element will succeed and remain compliant?
The successful 6-figure consultant understands that the client's biggest fear is uncertainty. It's delay. It's failure.
And the highest value they can possibly offer is the certainty that the client's investment in their time, their money, and their reputation is protected. That protection, that certainty, that's the true commodity. And it is worth exponentially more than any utilized hour you could ever possibly bill for.
So let's quickly summarize the 2 central lessons from this analysis on achieving success as a 6-figure freelancer. We've identified 2 main barriers preventing these high-expertise professionals from earning what they're truly worth.
First, the absolute necessity of overcoming those deep-seated corporate pricing anchors, those old salary bands, those utilization rates that just trap the mind in the past.
And second,
And second, the critical necessity of reversing that destructive negative client perception caused by undercharging. You have to view your pricing primarily as a communication tool.
one that signals confidence, specialization, and high demand.
Never desperation or, just cheap availability.
The ultimate lesson here seems crystal clear. If you possess 20 years of specialist knowledge and expertise, you have to stop selling your time and start selling certainty.
Your fees have to reflect the catastrophic loss you prevent or the enormous gain you enable for the client, not the administrative hours you spend making it happen.
And that leads to a provocative final thought for you, the listener, to consider, based entirely on the research we've analyzed today.
If your expertise is already defined by 2 decades of high-level experience and credentials, then the only remaining hurdle is matching your pricing to the certainty and the risk reduction that you provide.
So the question to ask yourself is this.
What is the single biggest risk you remove for your ideal client? Is it financial? Is it regulatory? Is it reputation-based? And then how accurately does your current price reflect that specific high-magnitude value?
That is the pivotal question. It's what determines whether you remain, in essence, an expensive employee, or if you truly transition into a high-value, successful, six-figure freelancer. Thank you for joining us for this in-depth analysis of the consultant pricing material.